Welcome back to Midwest Murders, Mysteries, and Myths. It was a chilly January morning and tensions rose around the breakfast table in the Hoskins household. John Hoskins and his wife Huldah were in a heated argument, making everyone uncomfortable. Seated at the table were their 4 children, Roy 12, Merlin, Irene 15, and Gladys 18, all very aware of John's anger. The story unraveled when Alan Taylor, a local farmer, opened his door to a disoriented and injured young girl named Irene Hoskins. Irene said that her father, John, had brutally attacked her stepmother Huldah, and her 2 step-siblings, Roy and Gladys. John was thought to be a kind and gentle man, working hard and attending church every week. A widower with 2 children, he found love with fellow widow, Huldah Campbell, from a nearby town. Huldah grew up in southwest Iowa, where she had raised her 2 children. That morning, the family had planned to drive to Greenfield, Iowa, to visit John's parents. Unfortunately, things didn't go according to plan. The 2 girls, Gladys and Irene, had overslept, sending John into a rage. Knowing the children lived in fear of their father, Huldah felt uneasy leaving them but had to visit a neighbor. Having finished eating, John sat down his fork and rose from his seat. Stepping outside, he reached for a heavy wooden buggy axle he kept on the porch. Now armed, he approached Gladys from behind and struck her forcefully on the head. Without hesitation, he swung again, this time hitting her brother Roy, sending him sprawling to the floor beside his sister. 15-year-old Irene jumped up and ran out of the house. Pausing, she glanced back, finding her father standing behind her. Irene begged him to see what he had done. With no hesitation, John struck her hard on the side of her head, leaving her on the front lawn. Young Merlin, who also ran, sprinted into the backyard, his father yelling after him. "You better ride to your Uncle Charlie's farm, tell him what I did." Terrified, Merlin sprinted to the barn to saddle the horse. Back inside, John resumed beating Gladys repeatedly with the club, crushing her skull. Roy, regaining awareness, and attempted to resist. Ignoring the attempts to defend himself, John struck Roy repeatedly in the head. By this time, Huldah had returned to the house, oblivious to the horror unfolding inside. Unaware of the danger, she stepped onto the porch and entered the kitchen. Huldah found her children lying lifeless on the floor, as John struck her across the face. Dazed and caught off guard, Huldah stumbled onto the back porch and collapsed. In the barn, Merlin finished saddling his horse and galloped away through the yard. Glancing back, he saw his father standing over his stepmother. In the front yard, Irene came to and made her way to Huldah, looking through the door into the kitchen where her step-siblings lay. Though injured, Huldah was still able to speak, telling her to run. Among the first to arrive were Chester Wood and Alan Taylor. As they approached the house, they saw Huldah lying on the porch, a pool of blood forming near her motionless body. John sat sharpening a straight razor, cautioning the men not to come any closer. He warned them that he had a loaded shotgun just inside the door and would kill them if they advanced. Shortly, more neighbors and the local doctor began to gather. However, they encountered a different scene as they approached the house. John now lay in a pool of blood near the kitchen doorway, having slit his own throat and cut one of his wrists. As the doctor approached, he saw that John's hand and leg began to twitch, signifying that he was still alive. Entering into the kitchen, the room was splattered with the blood of the innocent victims lying lifeless on the floor. Despite initial appearances, it became apparent that John's injuries were superficial. Justice would eventually be served as John Hoskins faced trial for his incomprehensible acts. Pleading guilty to the charges of murder, he was sentenced to spend the remainder of his days behind the walls of the Iowa State Penitentiary. Meanwhile, Irene and Merlin's lives were forever altered from the deep wounds inflicted upon their shattered childhoods. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the unraveling of the Hoskins family murders of 1919. Thanks for watching.